Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming on and joining me for this Manti space, Be'ezras Hashem. And we're at Erev Rosh Chodesh Elul. Today, we said Yom Kippur Katan, the tefillos for Erev Rosh Chodesh, that we can't say tomorrow, but we're holding by almost Elul. And so that definitely is informing how we're feeling, and that the beginning of the new season is in the air. Hi, great to see everybody. Thank you for dropping your notes in the chat and saying hi. It's great to see everybody. So Parshas Re'e begins with Habracha V'Klala. Re'e Anochi Nosein Lifnechem Hayom Bracha V'Klala. Here Hashem says, I'm putting before you the bracha and the klala, the blessing and the curse. Es habracha asher tishmu es el mitzvahs Hashem Elokeichem asher anochi mitzavesem hayom. The bracha, and we're going to listen very clearly to what the words of the pasuk are. Asher tishmu, when you listen to the mitzvah that Hashem commands you today, okay, that I command you today. V'klala im lo tishmu el mitzvahs Hashem Elokeichem, and the klala will be if you do not listen to the mitzvahs of Hashem your God. Okay, and so I'm going to be talking today about the very serious misinformation that is out there a lot, that many people have been raised with this kind of idea of a punitive Hashem, of Hashem who punishes, of Hashem who is just waiting to catch us out. We're going to be addressing the perfectionist inside every one of us. And we're going to be asking ourselves a question. So is that really true? Don't we have proof then from this pasuk that as soon as you step out of line, you're going to get cursed, and only if you do all of the mitzvahs perfectly, then you get the bracha. Okay, that's the theory that we're going to be hopefully dispelling today, b'siyata d'shmaya. Okay, so first of all, Reb Asher says, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, that the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created Klal Yisrael is that the way he interacts with Klal Yisrael is not derech teva. It's not in a natural course of things. And the way that Klal Yisrael exists throughout history and shows up in the world is not in the natural way of the nations of the world. And he says, for Klal Yisrael, there actually is no middle ground between the bracha and the klala, which might seem to buy into that theory, but hold on and wait. We're gonna talk about it, and hopefully it will be a lot clearer before we finish today. But there is actually no middle ground between bracha and klala. So we're going to understand where the actual path changes, okay? But you have one path that is the path of bracha, and you have another path that is the path of klala, a path that is blessing and a path that is curse. And these are the two paths. Those are the only two options that we have. If we're not choosing bracha, we're choosing curse. And if we're moving away from curse, we're choosing bracha. Unlike the other nations of the world. The other nations of the world have all kinds of shades of gray. Not so Klal Yisrael. We could either be marching towards, notice the words carefully, marching towards the highest pinnacle of success in every area, spiritually, physically, with health and wealth and success in all areas, or chas v'shalom klala, descent into the depths in every kind of area of life. If we go in the ways of Hashem, Hashem is going to give us a bracha. Hashem is going to spread his wings over us and guard us and guide us. And if not, then chas v'shalom we fall into the arms of the lowly worlds of the nations of the world. We don't have any in-between path, Reb Asher explains. So let's first of all understand what Reb Asher says about this, and then we will do a little bit of a dive into perfectionism and what we understand from the Torah, what the Torah means about these two paths. Okay, so Chazal tell us in Ksuvos, Maise beraban Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was riding on a donkey. He was going, and he was coming out of Yerushalayim, and the Talmidei Chachamim were walking after him. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was walking on a donkey. The Talmidim were walking behind him, and they saw a young woman, and she was gathering barley under the little balls of feces of the animals of the Arabs. Okay, she was walking in the field, the outskirts of Yerushalayim. This was after the Chorban Habayis, and it was land where the Arabs let their animals graze, and the feces of the animals were all over the fields, and among the droppings of the animals, this young Jewish woman was gathering grains of barley to eat. And Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai asked her, "My daughter, who are you?" And she said to him, "I am the daughter of Nakdimon ben Gurion, one of the wealthiest men of Yerushalayim at the time." Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai said to his Talmidim, "I remember when I signed on this young woman's ksuba when she got married. I remember when I signed on the ksuba, on the wedding certificate when she got married. And I called out on her behalf, Elef alofim din rezav, on her behalf, that her father was going to give her thousands of gold coins as a dowry, apart from what her father-in-law was writing in the ksuba." Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai cried and said, "Ashrechem Yisrael. How fortunate are you, Klal Yisrael." So here we have another kind of, he cried and he said, through his tears, he was showing his empathy for the situation of the young maiden who had come from such a wealthy family and now found herself picking between the droppings. And he said, nevertheless, fortunate are you, Klal Yisrael. At a time when Klal Yisrael, as a nation, are doing the will of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, no one can rule over them. When Klal Yisrael is fully absorbed and fully committed to doing the will of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, no one can rule over them. But at the time when they are not doing the will of a Kadosh Baruch Hu gives them over into the hands of a lowly nation. And not just a lowly nation, but the animals of the lowly nation. She's picking between the droppings of the animals, of the animals of the lowly nation. This is where this young woman, who came from such a wealthy, fortunate family, now here she is picking between the droppings. Rahman al-Islam. Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai said this with tears. He cried as he said this, but his message was, "You're fortunate." Why are we fortunate? Rav Asher asks, so why exactly are we fortunate over here? Why did he say, "Ashreichem Yisrael"? Fortunate to you, Klal Yisrael, when he saw the degradation of Klal Yisrael, symbolized by this young lady who at her wedding had such riches spoken for her, and here she was out in the fields picking between the droppings of the animals of the Arabs. What could be fortunate about Klal Yisrael when they're found in such a state? And we could say the same thing about Klal Yisrael in right now, okay? Where yes, we are fortunate to live in the land of Eretz Yisrael, and that people can come and live in Eretz Yisrael, but we have to be in bargaining and they can still throw all kinds of dangerous things at us and the whole political unrest, whatever's going on here. Could we say Ashreichem Yisrael? We don't feel free. We don't feel free here the way that we would like to. And the answer is from Abasha. Rav Yochanan saw in this a clear sign that the behavior, that the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu interacts with Klal Yisrael is absolutely only by Hashgacha Elyon. It's only Hashgacha Pratis, and it's not in the way of the world. In this, that the fall was so incredibly sharp and steep, that the fall from such wealth to such degradation, that could only be B'yad Hashem. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can take from the pinnacle and throw so low. Many of the nations of the world that are imprisoned or enslaved or overtaken by other nations, and either they have a kind, either they're under the benign control of the other nation, or it's less benign control. But this kind of subjugation, this kind of degradation, to that degree, that such a wealthy person was going out into the fields picking grains of barley in such a way between the droppings of the animals of the Arabs of the time, to that kind of degradation that she should fall. This could only be B'yad Hashem. This kind of steep fall and degradation was not something that could happen b'derech hateva, in a natural way, but only B'yad Hashem. And it's a moifes. It's a negative moifes, but it's a moifes. A moifes means it's a sign. It's a kind of a miraculous sign. And just as there are positive miraculous signs, the miraculous Hatzah, the miraculous rescue that HaKadosh Baruch Hu arranges, the miraculous salvation from all kinds of danger that HaKadosh Baruch Hu organizes for us. These are clearly positive miracles that we see. And sometimes we see painful miracles. This is such a painful miracle. It's a painful miracle that points to the fact that even in our degradation, even in our suffering, even in the agony of what could take place, who is taken in such degrading ways? This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does when he wants to show us Klal Yisrael as a whole. It's not pointing fingers at individuals, but Klal Yisrael as a whole are not going in the ways that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has asked us to go in. And this is our great fortune. This is our great fortune. Because if it wouldn't be like this, one second, how could a small nation exist among all of the other nations that are trying to overcome us? If we say that, okay, it's just a natural thing. Every nation exists as with their own national history, and every nation just has its own natural path. Then, in the course of history, Klal Yisrael would disappear, chas v'shalom, because they're a small nation, and other small nations have just disappeared. But because our existence is not b'derech hateva, it is not predicated on any natural way that any other nation has existed, and so our existence is only according to the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so, just as we know the story of Rabbi Akiva, who went with his Talmidim and the comrades, and they saw the fox coming out of the Kodesh Kodashim, and Rabbi Akiva laughed while the others cried, and they said, Rabbi Akiva, why are you laughing? And he said, why are you crying? And they said, a fox in the Kodesh Kodashim? How could we not cry? And he said, but that's precisely why I'm laughing, because just as the prophecy that said the foxes will play in the holy places came true, so the prophecy that boys and girls and old men and young old people will come back to the streets of Yerushalayim will also be fulfilled. And so the hope of Klal Yisrael, that at the time when we come and do tshuva, and the times of tshuva are upon us. And so we have a chazaka that when we do tshuva and we return to Kadosh Baruch Hu, then Kadosh Baruch Hu will return to us and will return us to success, because that's truly what Hashem wants from us. That is our destiny, and no one can take that destiny away from us. So let's go back to the original question that we asked. Does this mean the klala and the bracha, and that we only have two? There's only two forks in the road. We have two choices, and you're either choosing a bracha, a blessing, or you're choosing a curse. Doesn't that seem to imply that there's really only one way? That really it's either you get it perfect or you're doomed. Doesn't it seem to imply that? And the answer is absolutely not. How do we know not? So first of all, the Nesiva Shalom brings down in a beautiful maimar about bar mitzvah, actually. And he says that we would think that before bar mitzvah, a bar mitzvah child would have to have an exceptionally intensive bar or bas mitzvah, okay? A boy before the age of 13 and a girl before the age of 12 would have to undergo exceptionally intensive classes on every single aspect of mitzvah observance, so that the minute that they become bar or bas mitzvah, they would never make any single mistake at all in any way of keeping their mitzvahs. We would think that had to be. And yet we don't find that that's the custom in any place in Klal Yisrael. A bar mitzvah boy usually does learn how to put on his tefillin about a month before his bar mitzvah, so that he will learn how to do it, and he'll be able to do it from the moment that he's bar mitzvah. But we don't see that that there's any kind of frantic preparation for bar or bas mitzvah, of mitzvah observance, that they have to get it perfect. In fact, there's an understanding that they are now being ushered into the community of adult members of the community, and that it begins with bar or bas mitzvah. They don't have to get it perfect, but that they become now responsible to fulfill the mitzvahs. And we know that only at age 20 is a person culpable midei shamayim. The Beis Din Shel Ma'ala only holds somebody accountable at age 20. So what that means is there's this kind of grace period from bar bas mitzvah until age 20, where a person is considered to be learning. They are in the period of shimush. They are learning how to do the mitzvahs, and they're not expected to be perfect. Of course, an adult is expected not to be perfect, but to have to take responsibility for their performance of the mitzvahs. So that's one example of how we understand that perfection is not demanded of somebody, even if they are considered to be an adult and they are now counted as an adult in Klal Yisrael, such as being as bar and bas mitzvah. That's Nesiva Shalom says that. Rav Shimshon Fal Hirsch brings down something beautiful in Parshas Re'e on Matan Torah. It says, "Vayichan ha'am neged hahar," that the nation encamped opposite the mountain, Har Sinai, opposite the Mount Sinai, when the Torah was going to be given. And Rav Shimshon Fal Hirsch, with the extraordinary ear for language, asks, what does this word neged mean? Opposite the mountain. We wouldn't have expected that the encampment of Klal Yisrael, ready to receive the Torah, would be described as keneged, as if it were against the giving of the Torah, right? We would think it was together with the giving of the Torah. We know this Eza Kenegdoi, with the creation of Chava. She was created as a kind of opposite force, a positive opposite force towards her husband. And the Mefarshim say that if he's going according to the Torah, she's with him. She's an Ezer. And if he's going against the words of the Torah, she should be connected. She should be opposite him. She should try and get him on the right path. So there is a place for a woman to have a difference of opinion with her husband if he's not going on the right path. So what does the word keneged mean over here when it comes to talking about Klal Yisrael encamped at Har Sinai? Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says that there are always going to be two realities. There's the reality of the perfect truth of the Torah, which is the completely perfect aspiration to which we dream of aspiring. And then there's where Klal Yisrael is when they receive the Torah. Again, using the idea of the Nesiv Shalom, we might have thought that there was a frantic preparation period before the giving of the Torah to learn all of the laws, so that once they got the Torah and then became culpable to keep the Torah, that they would know what to do. But we find that they received the mitzvah of Shmir Shabbos, but they didn't receive all of the detailed halachas. And so when they received the Torah, they received it in an aspirational fashion. They received it knowing that they were going to have to go through a period of intensive learning. But that period of intensive learning was after having received the Torah. So when they received the Torah, they were not at the level of full development of perfection, even though they said Na'aseh v'Nishma, and they received these two beautiful crowns that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent down to them through the aspect of their faith and saying Na'aseh v'Nishma, we will do and we will hear. So clearly they didn't know what fully it was going to entail, and their receiving the Torah was without really fully knowing all of the details of what the Torah was going to be. So we know they didn't know. Okay, we know that their receiving the Torah was at a point in history where they didn't know all of what it was going to entail, and that's precisely why they got the crowns, because they received it with the faith that whatever you said, Kadosh Baruch Hu, we're going to do it. And then they knew they were going to have to intensively engage in learning what they had now committed themselves to. So clearly they weren't held accountable during the initial period of time for all the things that they didn't know. Every mitzvah that Hashem gave them, don't go and collect the man on Shabbos. And then someone did go and collect the man. Don't do this. And then someone did go and do that. Maybe it was only one person in the encampment, but they were getting mitzvahs bit by bit. They were learning the halachas of Moshe Rabbeinu. They were being taught how to keep the Torah, but they weren't held accountable for the fact that they weren't perfectly keeping the entire Torah at that time, because they didn't know it, because they received the Torah and then they entered into the journey of learning and improving gradually throughout their life. Because if it wouldn't have been like that, says the Nesiv Shalom, there would never be a time when everybody was perfect, because we cannot fully perfectly fulfill the entire Torah. There is no perfection in Shmiras Torah and mitzvahs. Which one of us could possibly say that we fulfill the mitzvahs perfectly? I just read in a saying, I'm trying to remember who said this. What did I think it was Rav Elya Rott mentioned this. He was talking with some Talmidim, and they were talking about how doing tshuva. And he said, even if we can't think of an avera that we did, but which one of us could say that we fulfill the mitzvahs the way that we should? The infinite possibility of how to fulfill a mitzvah with ava, with love, and with yira, and with awe, and with all of the midos that we need to bring to all of the midos, with all of the glory and the awareness and the mindfulness that could be present every single mitzvah. There's no way that each one of us could always and forever fulfill every mitzvah perfectly. And so the giving of the Torah and the entry of the bar or bas mitzvah is the inception of the journey, the beginning of the journey. Now we're all on the journey, which is never going to bring us to perfection, but it's aspiring to be perfect. And so Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says that the keneged means that the reality of Klal Yisrael, of where we are at any stage, is always going to be neged tahar. It's always going to be in some way not in perfect alignment with the perfection of the Torah as it was given on Har Sinai to Moshe Rabbeinu. The purity, the wholeness, the shleimus, the perfection of the Torah that was given in Har Sinai that we aspire to is, as a whole, is unattainable. And so if we would wait till we all had achieved perfection in order to get the Torah at that point, we would never be able to get the Torah. So it had to be given in the inception. And we have to be ushered into the tekufa, into the period of our lives of full shmiras and mitzvahs, of bar or bas mitzvah, when we have the capacity to begin, when we have the capacity to think and recognize and think. And adulthood, the capacity to do that is at 13 for boys, 12 for girls, but it doesn't mark the perfection of our performance, but it marks the beginning of our journey of aspiration. So what can it mean then, the klala and the bracha? What does then the blessing and the curse mean? And so when we go back to the pasuk, the bracha, if you listen to the mitzvahs of Hashem, and the klala, the curse, if you don't listen. What does that mean for us? It means that the fork in the road is about the trajectory that we're choosing. It means, do you choose to listen to the guide that's taking us on the trajectory, on the path towards the Torah? Or are we choosing not to listen to the trajectory that guides us towards the Torah? And that's basically all the choice that we have. Listen to the Torah, want to be on the path of Torah, continue taking steps to go towards the path of Torah, or take a step away and say, I don't want to hear. I don't want to listen. I'm not on that path. And everything that we do is either taking us closer to the path of, I want more, I want to take a further step, I want to hear, or taking us away from the path. It's not about perfection of performance. It's not about being already the complete model of what it is, but it's about, where am I going? And in a consultation that I had professionally with a fascinating therapist in Yerushalayim who has worked with many, many couples, a couples therapist, he said to me that you can tell how much a person has the potential to grow by looking at how much they have grown in previous years. If a person has changed a lot in the recent year and the recent years, then they can know themselves that they are likely to continue on that trajectory onwards. But if a person hasn't changed much in the last year or 5, it's unlikely that they're going to change more. So future growth, the trajectory of a person's growth can largely be predicted by the amount of growth that they have been doing. That may not be true in businesses necessarily, but it's true when it comes to personal growth. And so if we know of ourselves that we've been trying, that we've been making shifts, that we've been making choices, that we've been trying to hear, we've been listening in, Shema, Im Tishmu, if you listen to what I'm showing you through the signs I'm sending you in your life, if you're paying attention, and paying attention doesn't mean that that we know exactly what Hashem wants, but we say, Hashem, I want to hear you. I hear you calling my name. I may not know what you're telling me yet, but I'm here. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu is in the kol, the mamad dakash. It means in the still quiet voice. It means we need to make the time. We need to give ourselves the time to hear. Give ourselves the time to listen. You can't listen if you're living in a cacophony. If there's so many voices around and the busyness of life is taking you on a stream where there's no way to hear. Im Tishmun means if you make the time to hear. If you create a space in your life and carve out a space, a time to listen in. Shabbos is that kind of time. Shabbos is supposed to be that kind of time. Shabbos by Tashuv is the Rosh Hashanah of Shabbos. Shabbos is the day of return. It doesn't mean it's a day of al-chet. We don't say al-chet on Shabbos, but it's a day of returning to the source, a day of listening, a day of quietening down. There's no devices on Shabbos. There's no deadlines on Shabbos. There's no clients and no boss on Shabbos Kodesh. Shabbos is a day where we have the time, and we need to make for ourselves the time just to listen. And listening can just be sitting with ourselves, whether it's under the cover at night or before we get up in the morning, just to say, I'm here with you, Hashem. I may say, Moidani, wash your hands, and be quiet with ourselves for a little bit and say, I'm listening to you, Hashem. If you have something you want me to know, tell me. Let me hear it. Or whether it's taking a walk by yourself, or whether it's sitting and saying Tehillim. Rebbetzin Greenberg, Alei Shalom, who I love to quote, said that frequently when she would sit in Tehillim, she would get answers to the questions in her mind that she had been asking Kadosh Baruch Hu. Whether it's when we say Tehillim, or when we're sitting quietly watching the sunset, whatever time appeals. Maybe it's when you're davening a little bit longer, davening Shabbos morning, and you give yourself the time to say one kapitel or nishmas or something that is different on Shabbos. It creates an opening to listen. Im Tishmun, if you listen, if you create the space to listen to where Hashem is guiding us on our trajectory. And it doesn't mean be perfect now. It's not a demand. It is, I'm encouraging to take your next step on your trajectory, on your path, because it's your unique step. And only each one of us can hear our own inner voice that's guiding us to our next step. One of my pet peeves is when people take on the mitzvah that's in vogue. You know, there's podcasts or this one talking about that, and everyone's mentioning this mitzvah, so everyone jumps on that bandwagon of that particular mitzvah. It may or may not be relevant to us personally, but if everyone's talking about it, it must be a good mitzvah. But it's not necessarily our next best step on our personal journey. And so we need to tune into ourselves. We need to be attuned to what's going on inside ourselves, because if we do create that space within ourselves, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to talk in a still, quiet voice to us and help us to know what is our next best step to move towards blessing. Or when you're sitting doing your own, yes, right, when you have a quiet moment in work and no one needs you and you have some quiet time just by yourself, exactly, to tune in, to be focused inwards and just say, I'm listening to you, Hashem. I'm listening. If you want to tell me something, I'm here. I'm listening to what you have to tell me. Hashem doesn't blitz someone out of Jewish history for making a mistake. A genuine mistake is not the stuff of curses. Genuine mistakes don't bring us to the point where we get, written off. Even miscalculations in how to fulfill a mitzvah. As we learned from Yosef Atzadik. Yosef Atzadik made a miscalculation. He asked the minister twice to mention him to Paro, and he got 2 years in prison. The Brisker Rav was once walking with a Shimon Shkop. Many of you have heard this before, but I love telling these anecdotes because they teach us so much. And Rav Shimon and the Brisker Rav asked his Talmud of Shimon Shkop if Yosef Atzadik would have only asked one time of the minister, how many years of what would have happened instead? And Rav Shimon answered him, probably he would have only had 1 year in prison. And the Brisker Rav said no, he would have not had to go to prison at all. The fact that he asked twice showed that even the first time wasn't with the level of emunah that he was capable of. And so Hashem gave him feedback. His 2 years of imprisonment was not punishment, but it was feedback. I hold you to a greater standard of emunah because your inner capacity for emunah is greater than this, Yosef. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him. And Yosef heard. Yosef listened. And when Yosef was taken out, his language was filled with only Hashem. It's only Hashem. It's not me. It's only Hashem. He had clearly worked on himself. He had internalized that voice. He heard clearly what Hashem was telling him. And he came out, the viceroy and he became, as Rav Victor Miller said about Yosef, he was a practicing king. He was basically the king of Klal Yisrael for the next 40 years. He was the one who guided Klal Yisrael from the family that went down to Mitzrayim to the nation. He set up the entire infrastructure for the nation that became the nation that then became so many people that brought out the bones of Yosef on their way out. It was in the schus of Yosef Tzaddik that Klal Yisrael became the nation. He was the one that set it all up. So not only wasn't he blitzed out of Jewish history for making a mistake or miscalculation or not living up to his potential, but it was a learning period. It was HaKadosh Baruch was giving him a 2-year intensive training in Emunah B'Tachon. He whispered to him, Yosef, this is something else I want from you. And that intensive was what actually empowered him to be who he became and what he was for Klal Yisrael. So for all of us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't punish us. He doesn't blitz us out because we make a mistake. We're not going to be relegated to the curses if we make a mistake or if we're not fulfilling a mitzvah perfectly. But being on the pathway of blessing is a pathway of choosing to listen, of choosing to hear where Hashem is guiding us, of choosing to be attuned to Hashem within us, of choosing to go towards, of aspiring to climb up the mountain of Avodas Hashem and not turning away from it and going on a different path, not turning away, not closing our ears and blocking our hearts from hearing Hashem talking to us inside us. Hashem talks to us, Hashem guides us. As it says in Eiv, V'nishmas shakai tavinem. Chapter 32 of Job, the verse says, the soul of mankind will inform him. And the Malbim says on that pasuk that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu communicates with us through the soul that is inside each and every one of us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu communicates with us through our souls. And if we listen in Tishmun, if you listen, then we will get Be'ezah Hashem, the guidance, the answers, whatever it is, we will get that. Okay, I'm just going to Be'ezras Hashem look into the chat and answer any questions. Anybody that wants to unmute and say something, ask something, you can go ahead. And if not, then I'm just going to wait here a minute while I just go into opening up your the chat. Just a minute while I have to. It might take me a minute. Excuse me a second. So it's taking. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody. I see you did
just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Love to hear you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Oh, great to hear from you. Thank you. I love to.
Hinda, you're muted.
Thank you for telling me that I'm muted. Thank you. So it looks like I am missing the chat here for some reason. Let me just okay. If you put a message in the chat, I don't see it. And you know what? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to, okay, give me another minute while I organize this. Okay, I hope I'm going to be able to see. Oh, I hear myself in double now. Okay, I'm going to try and see if I can see the chat here. If not, please retype your chat, whatever you asked me before.
Just asked, what were the klalos? Can you explain the klalos in light of what you shared?
The curses. Okay, just a second. No, I can't see the chat. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how not to get an echo. I have to leave this one.